Okay, now we're here. Okay, Lilian.
I was going to say that today I was scheduled to have an interview with I guess it's a podcast called New Books Network in England.
Ooh.
And the tech, everything went wrong with tech. So I was just thinking that never fails, something is like really hard. But anyway, hello everybody, and Santé.
She's good. She brought her wine. That's good. Well, I want to say thank you all for joining me this evening for this interesting book discussion on L'Origine. And we're going to meet Lilian and talk to her. And thank you, Lilian, for being here today. And I did want to briefly talk about, before we get into your background and all of that, I just want to it was an interesting way that I came to meet Lilian, and that is that I subscribe to a magazine. It's called Artist Magazine, and it's one of those magazines I get every month, and I just kind of flip through, work my way backwards to the front, and the magazine, the month it was a contest, right? It was for, was it 60 and over artist contest, and I'm flipping through, and I'm enjoying all the award winners. And then I see Fairfax, Virginia is what, and I thought, okay, well, here's an artist from Fairfax, Virginia, mixed media artist that I've never heard of. So I thought that can't be, because there aren't that many, there really aren't that many mixed media artists. It's an interesting thing. Like, there's a lot of artists in this area, but a lot of traditionalists or watercolor, but mixed media is really its own thing. And I thought, I know of most of the mixed media artists, but I haven't heard of Lilian. So I went to her website and I sent her an email, and I said, I came across your article in Artist Magazine, and I love your work. I would love, you're local to me. I would love to meet you. And so we had a coffee, we arranged for a meeting. Of course, at first she wrote back and said, I'd love to meet too, but I'm in Aruba. And I thought, well, that's nice in the middle of winter. So we finally met, and lo and behold, we had a lot in common. And it was, we were there, I think I was there for like 2 hours. And I left with Lilian's book in hand and me agreeing to volunteer to host a book discussion. So that is how that came to be.
Maybe we need to join a new club, make a new club.
What kind of
mixed media artists club.
Oh, that's true. We could. That's true. We could do that, definitely. So that is how I came to meet Lilian. And I want to say, my 2-hour conversation upon our meeting, I mean, there were so many stories shared, and we were both in awe. We were like, wow, we have so much in common and so many stories to share. And so Lilian is an international artist and now award-winning author. She won a selfie right through Amazon self-publishing award. And she's
actually was the I won 6 awards, and it was 6 awards, and the most prestigious was the Publishers Weekly.
Wow.
First place for selfie adult fiction.
Wow.
Pretty amazing.
That is amazing. I think some of those have come since we talked.
Yep.
So Lilian has explored a variety of artistic platforms to showcase and interpret her visual language. She is truly an award-winning mixed media artist with adventures and stories to share, and I'm happy to introduce you all to her tonight. So here she is. And I thought maybe you want to talk a little bit about your background and, being an artist, mixed media artist, and how writing came to be, just a quick little.
Right. I mean, I want to open it up to all sorts of questions.
Yes, we're going to
do that. But basically, I was born in Paris. I left when I was a child, and I grew up in Australia. So I have sort of a strange accent. And then I lived in Israel for a long, long time. Almost 17 years. And now I live in the States, in the Washington, D.C. area, as you know, in Virginia. And I've always been an artist. So I've got many, many decades of being an artist and working in, on different continents as an artist. I've always written about art. Like I have a lot of freelance articles out there for art magazines and especially ceramic magazines because I also do ceramics. So I've always loved writing, and art is sort of like I live and breathe out, which I think a lot of you out there probably know exactly what that feels like. But so I never thought I would write a book. And as we'll go along tonight, the discussion, I'm sure that we'll touch upon how this happened. But so it wasn't like a huge leap just to be writing about art or to think about writing. I've always loved writing. So now I have that under my belt, and it's like I got the bug and I'm working on a second novel. So this novel, though, I was asked on one podcast, now that you've got a formula of talking about a famous artwork, are you going to like write about another one? And the answer is definitely not, because this painting, just absolutely blew my mind, and it just had this magic spell over me. So I don't think I'm ever going to feel that connected. I mean, there's lots of art I love out there, but this special connection is that I had to this painting at that particular time in my life. I don't think I can recreate that.
Yeah.
So
on that note, so we are going to basically, I have some questions and I'll ask Lilianne, and we're such a small group. So if you have something that you want to contribute, go ahead, and we'll also open it up.
Yeah, this is very exciting for me. I mean, I do a lot of podcasts, but I love book clubs because I get to speak to readers, and I hear their, directly, like they have questions or they have tell me, what part of the book they liked or didn't like or what spoke to them. I love to hear from you as well. So
good.
Yeah.
So feel free to jump in.
Yeah.
But I do want to start off by saying, so it's interesting so I read the article on Lilianne in my Artist magazine. I didn't really know much. I didn't realize that she had written this book and what it was about. And so we started talking about it, and I didn't really even know the painting. But the funny thing was that I recognized the painting somewhat. And so basically, and a lot of you will appreciate this, I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and we frequented the Philadelphia Museum of Art quite often. It was kind of like my mom would take me and we would hang out there for hours when I was little. And we went into the Duchamp room. And I had told Lilianne this, and I know about Duchamp, but I did not know. So what happened was, he has all his famous kind of sculptures and his fascinating work. But in the corner of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, there's this wooden door. And so let me just preface by saying this was the 70s. And I am the daughter of a pediatric cardiologist who believed at the time that I am going to learn all of the female body parts and the names of everything, and you're going to say it correctly. You're not going to say made up names or anything, okay? So there was no hiding anything. And I was the kid who, we were in a preschool carpool, and I was the kid who said, no, the stork's not coming. No, that's wrong. Let me just tell you what happened. So anyway, so back to Duchamp and this room. It's a wooden door, and the wooden door has a peephole, and I was 5 years old, and there's a little step, and I see people stepping up and looking through the peephole, and of course I'm curious, and I look through the peephole, and I'm looking around, and there's this whole scene, and then there's a woman lying there, and and it's that perspective, and her legs are open, it's this whole thing, and I'm kind of like, okay, that's interesting.
Is this a live woman?
Kind of like, but so then I'd ask Lily, and I said, is that like, oh yes, it's called the waterfall. And I don't speak French. How do you say it in French? Entente, dons, Lilianne, how do you say it in French? The waterfall?
The waterfall?
I think he called that painting.
Did he call it the waterfall?
Yes, and it's not even a painting, it's an installation.
I'm not sure what he called. I don't think he called it the waterfall.
Okay, well, whatever it was just that it definitely made an impression on my brain. So when I was reading about this, I was like, I know of what that is. I know what that painting is. So. So anyway, so on that note, so your book was inspired by Gustave Courbet's painting, and which you informed me that also inspired Duchamp.
Right.
Okay, and so what was it about the painting that inspired you?
Well, also, I didn't know very much about Courbet either.
Okay.
I could have seen a few of his sort of deer paintings or his landscape that he did in the Franche-Comté, where he grew up, and he really was connected to nature. But when I went to Paris, it was on a residency, and it was at a time of self-exploration, I would say. I was thinking about my life and being a woman of a certain age and what that meant in terms of sexuality, but also in terms of my career. And because I had, just started to encounter, when you read like something that you're applying for in the arts and they say emerging artist, that is sort of code for young artist. And, even though that's really, it's biased, but and I was thinking about all these things, and I got this residency in Paris, but it was an open-ended residency for 6 weeks. And I knew I wanted to do some self-exploration about sexuality or being a woman of a certain age. So the first day I went to the Musée d'Orsay, the Orsay Museum, because I just get inspiration from going to galleries or museums. That's a way to easily kickstart, your inspiration. And I'm walking around and I see this painting, and it just really drew me to it. I mean, first of all, I was shocked that such a painting, you don't expect to see this realistic portrait of a woman's genitals and nothing else in a museum. It's just not something that you encounter, because when you think about it, before this particular painting, in museums, there was always like a hand or a piece of fabric or a fig leaf or something like that. You never actually saw a woman anatomically correct like that, realistically portrayed. And it's beautifully, beautifully painted. But it really does stop you in your tracks. So anyway, I continued, like I said, in the book, around the museum, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. And so I just took a leap of faith, and I thought, this painting is speaking to me. It's calling my name. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But so if you've read the book and you read the prologue, it's sort of my adventures on seeing this painting in Paris and then just deciding on the spot that I was going to become its copyist, which no other artist had done before, because it's not an easy painting to engage with in public, especially if you're a woman. It was a little bit disconcerting, to say the least. But to make a long story short, I used a lot of chutzpah, and I got in and I became its copyist. And over this period of time, when I got to know this painting probably better than anyone alive now, it became something that was empowering and liberating, compared to when I started painting, which was kind of like embarrassing and I was self-conscious. And that over time, over these weeks, engaging and dialoguing in my head with Courbet and with this piece and with museum visitors, we had this, constant engagement of dialogue. It was just like an incredible experience. And the painting just stayed with me even after the copyist experience. And when I got home, it just stayed with me. It was a very, very intense and intimate experience.
Your painting had to be signed off on. You said at the end, you had to go and make sure that they approved it. Could you take it home?
Yes, I took it home, but again, exactly like you say, I mean, they made sure, like whenever you're copying something, you can't copy the same size as the original, and they stamp your, virgin canvas and all sorts of things like that. But apart from that, once I got the authorization and I finished it, she was really, really pleased, because she had sort of taken a shot that I knew what I was doing. And then she signed it off and wished me luck, and we had a brief conversation, and she was very, very pleased that I had, completed what I set out to do, because she thought that I wouldn't really have the guts to do it.
So do you know are there any other, I was going to bring up, I mean, I don't know of any other artists who have painted, well, especially in that time period, women's genitals or that, up close and personal type of art. And the only one that kind of comes to mind is Georgia O'Keeffe was the first person that I've been exposed to that kind of painted female sexuality, even though in her writings, she always says, it really wasn't that, but.
That's right. I was just going to say, like, who's to say, like, if she has outright denied that, but.
Yeah.
I don't know, but so what's interesting is about the time, I'd say about the time just before he started painting. This is the time when photography, was starting to become more widespread. And if you've probably seen them in vintage stores or whatever, those postcards of women, especially Parisian women, sort of very scantily dressed, and sometimes, very, with spread thighs or whatever. So I'm sure that he, had seen them. Apparently he had quite a collection himself. And that's just in a tiny little reference thing I read somewhere that, he had some of these postcards. So I think at the time, if this is the way I see it, artists were threatened by photography, and they were also inspired by it and wanted to emulate it because they'd never seen something like that. It takes hours and hours and hours to do, of course, what a photograph, even though it wasn't a simple snapshot back then. And so I think that was one possible thing that was going on at the time. Okay, that this was
that's very interesting. Yeah, you're right, because it was like probably the late 1860s or something.
He painted this in 1866. So
okay.
Those postcards had been around.
Yeah,
and but no painter. And I also say in the book, when he went to visit the salon, and he saw Manet's work, and so other artists were getting close to becoming like a little bit breaking the rules and stuff, but no one could match Courbet. He was like a real character. He just wanted to break the rules no matter what, whether he was with his friends or whether he was painting. He just was a real bête noire, as they say, a black sheep, and he also was like one of the first bad boys of the art world. And I seriously fell in love with him. I absolutely adore him. And I think that one of the reasons I wrote the book is to humanize the painting and to de-vilify it, because people see it now, we can't help it. We see it through our collective contemporary lens, right? And we forget that it was a private commission. It wasn't supposed to be seen by millions of people in a museum. So when they vilify Courbet as a misogynistic pervert or something like that, it's so wrong. That is really not what he was about. And I don't believe that was the purpose of this painting. Of course, it was a commission for Khalil Bey, who did collect erotica, but I think he just was pushing himself to see how he could apply his realist philosophy to this part of a woman's anatomy and to the body itself. So, I think that is part of the reason that I wanted to write this book. It really give the painting its due.
Mm-hmm. And while you were the copyist and while you were painting, were you researching at that time? Did you know that you wanted to write the stories of the painting as you were spending the 6 weeks?
No, because like I said, I was not a huge fan of Courbet's work. I mean, some of his paintings are very beautiful, especially his nature paintings, because he has this gorgeous brushwork, and he used a lot of palette knife, and he was very expressive. But when I saw this painting, I remembered seeing it, of course, in one of my courses or whatnot, but it wasn't something that I knew a lot about. And when I was the copyist, so and it all happened so fast that when I was the copyist, I really wasn't thinking about it. I was thinking more technically and painting and thinking about this dialogue I was having with this image. And it's only when I got back home that I thought, well, it's really become part of me, and I've become part of its history in a way. And so I started researching, and thank God I read French, because I would say that 80% of what's out there on Courbet and on the painting is biographical, and it's in French. Mm-hmm. So I did, years and years of research, and the more I read, the more I just like my jaw dropped. I just couldn't believe the story. Like I really didn't have to embellish it all that much, because this really happened. And this is what the journey of this painting really was. And so I just thought, I've just got to tell the world. I became obsessed. I've got to tell the world about this. I've got to spread the word, especially to English speakers who may not know Courbet, who may not know about this painting. And I really was just obsessed. So that's how come I thought I need to write a book. But I, of course, did not realize it was going to take me 10 years. And I didn't realize how hard it is. I look at some authors, and they're so prolific. They write like, I don't know, 20 novels or something. And I was belaboring this novel. And I thought, I don't know how they do it, but it took me a hell of a long time.
Well, I think since your book has, it's based on a real person, and there's so much history and research, and, that takes time, getting all your facts right. And
and picking out, sort of cherry picking. You can imagine the wealth of information. I mean, you should see all my cards of information and the timeline I had pasted all around my studio. But the trick, I think, is when you're doing a historical fiction, is to cherry pick those details that are going to, really be exciting to the reader and still move the story along. That's why I decided, that if nothing really particular happened, I wasn't scared of like skipping 10 years or 20 years, because I just wanted to move the story along. It did take place over a century and a half. So we don't need to know every single detail.
Right. Yes, you did an amazing job. So your book is unconventional and daring. What was the riskiest aspect of publishing the book, and did it impact your career as an artist?
I'd say I'll start with the second part of that, because obviously the more I got into the book, you only have so many hours in a day. The book sort of took over my life, and I had to put the art on the back burner. So in a sense, it I wouldn't say hurt, but it interfered with the trajectory of my art career in a sense. However, after the publication, it's been very helpful, because, I'm sure you've all seen, everybody these days is writing a book. And that was not my intention. I'm just going to write a book, that didn't happen that way. But everyone seems to be writing a book, and a book does give you so much more exposure than, let's say, a painting that I could ever do, at my level. So after the publication, it did sort of like open doors for me in different ways. So it's sort of like a two-edged thing. As for the unconventional nature of it, yes, it's unconventional as a historical fiction, because it contains the sort of like a memoir, first-person essay of the prologue, right, about my adventures. And I had a lot of pushback. I had a lot of pushback from agents and publishers who said, no, well then, this doesn't belong in the historical fiction genre. You've got to change everything.
Because you had
yes. And I just was, this is a bit of hubris, because I'd never published before, but I just knew that the only way to get readers excited about a 19th century painting is to bring it into the current 21st century and have my personal experience with it in a sort of an entertaining way. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I don't think that, a lot of people would sort of say, oh, another 19th century painting. Okay. So in the end, I think I made the right decision, obviously, and so did the judges of these competitions. But that was sort of like a little bit deflating, I have to say. I mean, I got a lot of pushback about it, but I stuck to my guns, and I don't know how I did that, but I just said no. Oh, I know. So I decided in the end to self-publish. So then it is now picked up by a publisher and been re-released by another publisher now.
Wonderful. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow. Great.
Has the painting ever been displayed in the United States? I don't remember.
That's a good question.
Reading
Yes,
that.
yes, and that's what's so very exciting about this, is because before it even was in the Musée d'Orsay to this huge audience in the 1990s. In the 1980s, you might recall that Sylvia Bataille, who was the owner at the time, she was convinced by the curators of the Brooklyn Museum to include it in a retrospective on Courbet, but she refused to say, you know, it was anonymous lending. She did not want any of the publicity, and she didn't want people sort of knocking on her door after that. But what's interesting, and I'd like to open that up to all of you, what you think, because in the 1980s, when the painting was in the Brooklyn Museum, it actually didn't cause as much of a stir as I think it would like nowadays. I think because nowadays I've seen less sort of contentious paintings with signs on the doors of, as you know, sort of enter at your own risk type of things, you know. I think now, with the way that America is becoming more conservative, I think that this painting would have had a harder time being publicly shown like that. They would have said something about children, or what do you all think?
That's a good question.
I think it would be a problem. I mean, I have a lot of nude drawings that I just have in a closet because no one wants to show them. You know, it's a little tricky. Sometimes there is a specific show, but they don't let kids in, or I mean, it's a toughie. So I can understand with his painting, which is even more graphic than mine, that it would be a problem.
Yeah, yeah, and that was what was so amazing. Like in the museum when I was painting it, you know, especially the French, and would come in, like I said, that anecdote with the granddaughter, and they would come in with their children. One woman came in with 5 little kids. She had 5 kids. They were probably all under 8. Mm-hmm. And she was pregnant again. And she was, you know, openly, she was saying, no, you know, les enfants, and this and that. You know, there was none of that sort of, it was very, like you said, Julia, the way you were brought up. I mean, yeah, very open. You know, there were groups of students that were sitting on the floor around the painting with the teacher asking questions. You know, it was, you wouldn't see that here. I can bet any amount of money that would not happen here.
Agreed. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Norman.
Can I break in? Can I say something? I just wanted to first tell you that as a fellow writer, I really admired how well you wrote that book, especially since you hadn't had previous experience. Writing is an art form in itself, obviously, so you're multi-talented in the arts, and I really just want to commend that. I have rarely read a book that held my attention and made me eager to go back and read it as much as your book. And I think part of it was the subject matter, but I think part of it was the beautiful writing. So I wanted to commend you for that.
Thank you.
And the other thing I wanted to go back to a statement that I don't know who said it, something about misogyny. And my sense is that the beauty of this painting is that it reflects the ambivalent attitude of society towards women beautifully. You know, it portrays this woman's body as an object, which fits in with the misogynistic approach to women. And yet the title of the painting is, "This is the source of everything in the world." So it presents the power of women at the same time that it objectifies them. And my sense is that a lot of the problems people have with women in our society is that they are scared to death of women's power, both their sexual power and their creative power. And so they need to minimize women and belittle them and put them in, objectify them because of this tremendous fear that they have of women. So I just wanted to mention that.
Well, that's really cool coming from the only guy here tonight.
And a psychiatrist too, right? A retired psychiatrist.
Well, I just wanted to tell you that when I was
He's a psychiatrist.
when I was doing psychiatry, I found it so much better to work with women because women are so much more genuine about their true selves than men. They don't try to hide behind some image and macho stuff, and they let you in to know them. But you have to have 100% respect for them in order for them to let you do that. And the more I got to know women and know how women's minds work, the more I really have positive feelings about women and feel bad about the way that women are treated in our society. So, well,
thank you. And I think that sort of segues into the point that, look at what's going on in this country now, where women are losing, rapidly, losing control of the rights over their own bodies. And so I feel like some people tell me, so why do you think this painting is still so contentious, still so relevant? And I just say, look around, it is absolutely relevant that this painting still causes such a stir. And also the painting is, I don't know if you are aware, but so many very famous contemporary artists have riffed on this painting. It has inspired so many painters. I have a whole file of painters from Marina Abramovich to Torkel, the German artist. And I've seen, when I was in France, I went to different museums and contemporary museums, and I'm telling you, I just saw it like, there it is, and so and so. And then I went to, when I finished painting, I went to Ornans, which is Courbet's hometown, where the museum of Gustave Courbet is. And they had a huge exhibition of international, very famous artists who have had a dialogue with L'Origine du Monde. And it was the first time L'Origine du Monde traveled outside of the Musée d'Orsay. So I went there to have a look. And it was, stunning, mind-boggling. In fact, afterwards, if you're interested, I could send Julia some of the artists who have, done some of their own interpretations on this painting.
Absolutely.
I think it would be really interesting to see that. And of course, you know that Facebook has had to meet it in court and lost and all these sorts of things. So it's still an incredibly relevant painting. And yet, like you say, Norman, somebody did ask me once, would I have painted this or would I have felt the same if the painting did not have that title? And that's an excellent question, because I honestly don't know, because like you, I mean, it's the marriage of the title with the actual subject matter that really drew me to it. And if it had not been called that, I really don't know how I would have felt about it, or how we would all tonight feel about it. I think its title is
out of the realm of pornography.
Yeah.
Because it goes to the heart of what this really represents. And even though you portray in your book how these men all, were masturbating, looking at it and all that, maybe they didn't see that aspect of it. But
right.
Courbet, certainly, I think he really did understand what he was doing. And by the way, I was really pleased to learn so much about Courbet, because he's one of the artists of that period that I think most people, even people who know art, don't know as much about him as they do about, for example, Monet or people like that. So it was great to learn more about him. I like that.
Right. And he was such a radical and also, an activist and a revolutionary. And he really believed in his causes, and it sort of was the downfall of him. Unfortunately, he had such a horrible end.
Yeah.
I was like almost crying when I was writing about his tragic end. But you know, when I said that I wanted to that so many different artists are influenced by that. Well, just recently I came across this painting, this poem by John Updike, and he mentions L'Origine. And it's really, and he mentions it, and I want to read that stanza. Should I?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, you'll have to excuse me if I say the name of the poem, but it is John Updike. So he calls it Two Cunts in Paris. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. So he's comparing, I know Carol's laughing. So it is John Updike, like I said, we have to excuse him. But anyway, so he compares Courbet's painting to something else. But here he says, Courbet's oil, L'Origine du Monde, was owned by Madame Jacques Lacan, and through some tax shenanigans became the Musée d'Orsay. Go see it there. Beneath the pubic bush, a matted Rorschach blot, beneath blanched thighs of a fat and bridal docility, a curved and rosy closure says, ici, here. And the point is that he makes, like, it really is the first time, you know, that you can see how a woman really is. And the fact that he calls it a Rorschach blot is absolutely correct, because you come to it with who you are. And some people see it as exploitative and pornographic, and other people see it as liberating and, you know, just absolutely empowering. So it is like a Rorschach. This whole painting is like a Rorschach, in my opinion.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
I have a request. No, nobody here but Nancy knows me, so I'm
I was going to introduce you, but go ahead, introduce yourself.
I'm not going to introduce myself. I'm going to make a request.
Okay.
I would request that you take your copy of this painting and hang it in the Supreme Court.
Good. This is my old friend and art teacher, actually. She teaches art in Maryland, where I live. And we all introduced ourselves before you got on, but.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I mean, that would be brilliant, but I would see you in jail after that.
I'll come visit. I'll bring you brownies.
No, that is really great. And actually, I had passed the book along. Well, I don't know if you've all read it or not, but the Jacques Lacan, the psychologist, which Norman probably knows more than most of us here about Jacques Lacan, the psychologist who owned it. He was a very, very famous and very, very eccentric French psychoanalyst whose philosophy and psychoanalytic theories sort of are considered like the next big branch of psychoanalysis after Freud. Like, he really made an impact, especially in South America and France. So I thought, okay, he was just the hardest character to write, because he was so eccentric, so crazy. His theories are so convoluted that I was even watching, I remember watching a YouTube, Jacques Lacan for Dummies. You know, I was just like, I was going round and round in circles. I was reading his texts. I was looking at his old footage. I mean, I really did my research. So the point I'm getting to is that in Australia, my sister is a professor of psychology, and she said, oh, I know the couple from Argentina who founded the Australian Foundation for Lacanian Psychoanalysis. And they were very close to somebody who studied directly with him. And I said, I have to meet them. I have to talk to them about Lacan. So they invited me for lunch when I was there once in Melbourne. And I asked them, would you read the chapters on Lacan so that I will know, like, am I in the right direction, or have I captured him?
Mm-hmm.
So they agreed to do that, and they read it. It's a husband and wife team, and she said, it's perfect. She said, it is so exactly like I would know him. And even some of the dialogue I took from things he actually said. So I really felt very proud of myself after, thinking that I had no idea what he was talking about. So I sort of captured what was just enough so that my readers would know him.
He probably had no idea what he was talking about either. So
probably not. Some people thought he was a charlatan.
All these big shot kind of people wanted to be the next Freud, and they came up with all kinds of harebrained theories. And most of them these days, including his, are pretty much dismissed. So
well, he is not. But yes, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, I also am. I did a major in psychology, and it was very interesting to me. But he's very obtuse, and it was very, very interesting what he did with the painting, how he sort of sprung it on his visitors.
Yeah,
and that's true. I mean, that has been recorded. So.
Mm-hmm.
Where is your painting? Can we see it?
No, actually, it's boxed up, and I always get asked this question. I've only shown it once in New York as part of an installation that I did, but the painting is home. And when I got it home, I did have to think about, like, do I want to have it on the wall? Of course, I was extremely proud of not only my copy, but the whole experience and getting out of my comfort zone and doing something that was very difficult for me to do. But as you probably saw read from my book, I feel like extremely protective of this painting. And I didn't want to sort of have it on my wall and have people think it was there again just for shock value or not understand the painting. And I just thought, no, it's just too personal for me, and I did not. So it's not like on display in my home. Mm-hmm. So that's a story. But I did show it once in New York. I did this installation and the piece was called L'origine c'est moi. L'origine is me. And I took photographs of different parts of my body in the nude, but just like different parts. And I put all the photographs together to make sort of like this disjointed body. And in the center was my painted copy of L'origine. Mm-hmm. So it was, a very interesting installation, and it sort of rounded out and closed the circle as far as like my identification with the painting. Yeah.
Fascinating. Wow, fascinating.
I have a question.
So I think we've gone over all my questions. So yes, I'm opening it up for you.
I'm curious about the training that you have or had to call yourself a copyist.
Good question.
Well, first of all, I don't think that anyone gets trained to be a copyist, but like when you apply to be a copyist at a museum, mm-hmm. they expect you to be a professional artist who can show, you're not only where you've come, but the sort of painting that you can, and to show that you are capable. Like they don't want somebody to sit there and be a copyist and sort of do their interpretation of an expressionistic thing. No, that's not what they're looking for. When you say you're a copyist, you need to be able to get something from copying that painting that will sort of help your artistic practice. So you more or less have to be in the realm of sort of more realist, more traditionalist. At the time, I was doing much more of that sort of work. Now, as Julia knows, I've sort of gone off. I have much less patience these days. I used to do paintings that could take me 6 months because they were hyper realistic. And now I can't do that anymore. It's gone. But so to be a copyist, you don't get trained, but obviously you have an eye. And if, when you do realist work, you're constantly, your eye and your hand, they're just like, calibrating every 5 seconds.
Right.
So I did have some works in my, let's say, in my portfolio that could show my expertise, if you want to put it that way, in painting that way. But I'd never done a copy before, never. And I was terrified, but you know, that's the way people used to learn. In fact, when I started researching, I realized that Courbet refused to go to the Academy of Art because he was such a renegade, and he decided to teach himself and to only paint copies at the Louvre. So, you know, I was almost walking in his footsteps, I felt like.
Okay, that's interesting, because I'm an artist, and I was wondering that the whole time, you know.
Well, the Smithsonian has copyists. I think you can apply, isn't that correct? That you can apply to be a copyist at the National Gallery, I guess.
Yeah, I know someone who did that. And I'm not sure if he went to the Smithsonian or if he went to the Baltimore Museum of Art. But there's a classical school of art in Baltimore called the Schuler School.
Yeah, I know that.
And they do teach those old techniques.
Yep.
And they use the Marais medium, which contains lead. And he talked about his experience of going in and making a copy. And he actually had to leave his easel and painting there in a closet during the process. He couldn't take it home. Anyway, it was a part of his education.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I know my son is actually a painter, and he's very much into Renaissance painting. And he also, he mixes his own, you know, mediums, and he looks at, he just got a commission, and he used rabbit skin glue and all. That's not me. And so, you know, I was sort of like the poor man, because all the other copyists at the time at the museum, when I was copying, I think there was not all the other, there was 2 others, and they had their oils and all that. And I had, like, you know, a couple of tubes of acrylics, and it was like kind of embarrassing, but I just, I am quite a good painter. And I said, I can do this, you know, I know my acrylics and I can do it. So,
so you did it. Oh, you did it in acrylics.
Yep.
Oh,
so how did the finish work? I mean, you know, the finish on acrylics is different than an oil.
Oh, for sure. It's never going to be an oil copy. But I don't know if you've seen in my book or something, or if Julia's shown you my copy, or if you've seen my copy of L'Origine. It's really pretty good. And even though I did do it in acrylics, so I can't see how I could have done that in oils, because I was working every day, right? And I only had 6 weeks. Some of the other copyists were there for longer. Okay, I had like 6 weeks, and I needed every minute of that, because it just takes forever. But I got such an appreciation of Courbet's, you know, talent and the way he painted, and I just felt every brush stroke he did by the end of it. It was just an incredible experience.
So is the cover art your art, or is it Courbet?
No, this is interesting. I've got both. Okay. The first one, when I self-published, well, first of all, as you'll realize, of course, I couldn't have the original painting on the cover. That was never possible, because it would be censored. Even though a book in France on this painting does have the painting on the cover, but I could not do that. So when I first self-published, this was the cover when I first self-published. It's a painting by Courbet.
Okay.
And when the other publisher re-released my book, they said they wanted to do a different cover. And interestingly enough, so this is the cover now, right? These legs, which it makes much more sense now, actually, it's a really clever. These legs actually belong to this head that I had chosen. And it's a painting by Courbet. So I'm very happy that there is a connection between the first edition and the second edition. So it's really good.
What was your reaction to the woman who went in and did a performance of the painting?
Well, as I said in my book, I understand her because I even asked to do it myself, right? When I was, let's not go there. But anyway, I did. And of course, the guy looked at me and thought I was like totally, ready to be committed. But I understand her because it does have this power that you want to prove not only that, you have this, you also have this power, but you want to dialogue with this painting. If you're a woman, there's a certain very strong response. And so I did understand her, but I was a bit jealous that she didn't ask and she just did it. So maybe I shouldn't have asked. Or maybe I'm glad I did ask and said,
yeah, right. That's what I was going to say.
Was she there while you were painting? Did that happen?
No, this was afterward. This was after I'd finished painting.
Okay.
And it caused a real stir. I follow her on Instagram now. We know of each other, but she has gone in a very, very, I would say, radical feminist direction, to the point where it's almost like, okay, she had those 5 minutes of fame, right, at the museum, dealing with this topic. And I really understood her, and I thought it was a very, very strong performance and very brave. But now she's doing all sorts of things like, entering places and having red paint and bleeding as if she's menstruating. And it's all power to her. But I just feel she's gone off in this very, very radical tangent that has sort of alienated a lot of people, women included.
I think somebody actually caught video of her doing that, because I came across it when I was doing my research, and someone actually did, capture it on a cell phone. I was like, wow, okay.
So I have a question for you. Another question. How has the experience of copying Courbet's brush strokes and so intimately affected your art now?
That's a really great question. What it gave me more than anything else was like a fearlessness, because I had to overcome, my own fears, not only of like, having to copy this painting and not make a fool of myself by painting a horrible copy, but I also, I never liked when people watch me paint. So it was really uncomfortable, and I had to overcome so many things. So after that, it wasn't so much that it affected my actual brush strokes or anything like that, but I became much more fearless. And I think maybe that's why, I come to think of it with your question, that maybe that's why my art practice has taken a different turn, because I could stay with my very beautiful realist paintings if I wanted to, but somehow I'm going in a very different, more expressive way, and showing a bit more of myself. So that was a good question.
That's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, the research you did must have been tremendous. Where did you, and I know you said it was mostly in French, where did you find all this information? And in order to make it some parts more palatable, did you have to embellish some of it?
Yeah, well, obviously, okay. I get asked this question, like how much of it is real and how much did you make up? And I would say 85% is absolutely based on fact. And the 15% that is not is where the paintings, like people lost track of the painting. And so that was the hardest part, because I wanted to stick to really what could have happened. And so I had this huge timeline, as I said, and I was like, grabbing sentence here and a sentence there of a whole book I'd read. Sometimes there'd be one interesting thing and I say, oh,
wow,
I can see that X person was in this same town, and maybe they met this person and that's how they got to know each other. For example, I think it was Antoine de la Narde. How did he get to open his store of Asian ceramics, all right, Asian porcelains? And he was a legionnaire, And he probably went to the Legionnaires' opening of this big Legionnaires' palace. And he probably met the guy who introduced France to Japonisme and the entire porcelain craze.
Mhm.
So that was an important sort of intersection. And then it led him to do other things and visit his studio. And so things like that is what I call made up, but it's really based on research.
Mhm.
And as far as like how I found everything, it's not like it's hidden. If you speak French, you know, you look it up, and sure, there's books, and I read tons and tons of books. There's one very famous, very popular, I mean, in France, it's not like here, like historians and philosophers are rock stars, okay? If you're really good, it's very different, right? So he's like a rock star historian, and he has a column in Le Monde, one of the best papers.
Mhm.
And he is the expert on Courbet and especially L'Origine du Monde. I actually met him. And so his book was like my Bible, but also seeing we're on video, I'll show you what really, really got me to write this book. I can hardly lift it. Is this huge, huge compendium of Courbet's correspondence.
Oh,
And that's when I fell in love with him, because I just was laughing out loud. The guy was such a character from the moment he was born, just about. I mean, he gave his parents such a hard time. He was hard-headed from the word go, and he just knew that he was going to be famous. He knew that he was going to make it. He just had it, you know, the it factor. And his letters are brilliant. And this happens to be a translated, it just came out when I was writing the book. It took this woman 10 years to translate all his letters. And so if you're at all interested, you can find the book now, his translated letters. He's entertaining to the nth degree. It's fantastic.
Does he talk about the painting in the letters?
He talks almost nothing about the painting.
ah,
Interesting.
It's really interesting, but he does talk about commissions, and he does talk about, you know, the few women that actually he had some relation with. But oh, this is interesting. As we wrap it up, just you probably got the sense from the book, but I just found a card that I wrote where I was trying to write some of the descriptions, adjectives to describe Courbet to myself after reading the letters. So, charming, belligerent, egotistical, driven, charismatic, bold, obnoxious, visionary, stubborn, self-pitying, principled, fiery, rebellious, and driven.
Wow. Quite a character.
He's quite a character. So before we wrap up, I just want to say, you know, I want to hear a little bit from all of you about anything in the book that might have, you know, touched you, or I've heard a little bit from one or two of you, but is there anything you want to ask or want to leave me with, or?
I've recommended it to a lot of people. I thought it was a great book. I did read it a few months ago, and so as time goes by,
Yeah, sure.
I have, it's, you know, a lot of it has slipped from my mind, but now I feel like reading it all over again.
Thank you.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking I would reread it. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's right. That's true for me too. We both read it 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, but even as we're discussing it, parts of it are coming back to me, and I really like the way you pulled in the Holocaust and how the Germans stole the art, and it was really, you know, like almost like an exciting, adventurous idea of how this guy got it back.
Yeah, and that is actually based on fact. You know, the fact that he had put just 10 of his paintings in this safe under somebody else's name, thinking it was, you know, safe, and then the Russians come in and raid all the safes. It was really amazing that it surfaced again, and really till the 1990s, people thought that it no longer even existed, and it became sort of a legend on its own. It just was really an interesting painting. So it lives on, you know, it lives on, and hopefully, you know, my book will touch people and expose people. And yeah, so.
I was going to ask, can you let us know what your next novel is?
Oh.
Give us some ideas about what it's about.
Yes. My next novel is also historical fiction, and it's also more or less based in France, you know, because obviously being born in France, I'm very drawn to things about France. But it's about a woman. She straddled the 19th and 20th century. She had a very difficult childhood, and she was a prostitute and became like a high class courtesan. And she even had affairs with the Prince of England. And she just went up and up and up, and she became like a kept woman. And then she married an Egyptian prince and then murdered him. And
he murdered him?
She murdered him.
You murdered him. Okay.
She murdered him in England. They were visiting in England. And she had her trial at the Old Bailey. And it was one of the trials of the most famous trial of the 20th century, because she murdered him in cold blood and she got off scot-free.
Wow.
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 So my interest also, most of what you read about her would be about the trial. But my question to myself was, how did she get there? I mean, what happened? You know, she was a prostitute, and then she marries a prince. How, you know, what sort of woman is she? How did she get there? How did she come to the point where she murdered him and then got off scot-free? So I'm having a lot of fun with that.
Wow. Well, I see it should be a mini series, you know, a very French scandal.
Well, actually, I'm talking to somebody like about a film in development for L'Origine, but it's never going to happen. I mean, I wish it would, but I think that L'Origine would be a fantastic historical mini series. I think it's very relevant.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, you never know, right?
You never know. You never know.
When is your book coming? When is
you.
your new book coming out?
Oh, I haven't finished it yet. But because of L'Origine, you know, the sort of success of L'Origine, I now have, you know, 2 New York agents that are sort of saying, okay, when you finish this next manuscript, we want to see it. But it's taking me much longer than I thought.
That's exciting.
I have one final question. Maybe I missed it. Did you say that Courbet influenced Duchamp? That the painting influenced?
Yes.
How was that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because even though the painting wasn't, when Duchamp did his painting, it wasn't, L'Origine du Monde had not surfaced, but there was a strange looking copy that had been printed in a book. Okay. So, and people say that it was attributed to Magritte of all people.
Huh.
Yeah. So it was sort of surfacing around that these people knew of the existence of this painting, but they didn't know where it was and whether it was still in existence.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now that it's come out, since it's come out, I'll send Julia a few examples of what other artists have, you know, done with this painting.
The first time that I saw this image, my memory is I saw it in an art museum bookstore in a book, but I believe it was a pen and ink drawing version of it. It wasn't the painting.
Yeah.
So maybe you're referring to that some people had actually reproduced it prior to its being discovered by the public.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yes. Yes. So first of all, I want to thank you all for you know, listening to me and having this discussion, and for being readers.
Yeah.
Is there one more question? Was there one more question I saw?
Oh, I was just going to suggest that she contact John Waters if she wants to have a film made.
That's a great idea.
You have some fantastic ideas, Carol.
Yeah, maybe I won't get invited back.
Oh my God.
That's why I'm Nancy's friend.
That's right.
I'm going to tell that one to my husband. He's going to get a big laugh out of that one.
Love it.
Thank
Well,
you
I
so
like
much.
to
I want to
It
thank
was
Julia. Thank you,
wonderful.
Julia, for organizing this and for your enthusiasm and for, you know, reaching out to me. And now we know each other. So it's incredible. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Welcome.
would love to meet
It
you
was great.
someday.
Thank you so much, Lilianne.
Thank you and have a wonderful evening, all of you.
Thank
Delight.
you, Julia.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye, aunties.
Bye. Thanks, Julia. Bye.
Thank you.
Don't turn off yet.